3, 4. Yeah, that's very good, Barney. How's this for the name of a rock group, huh? Charlie Rebate and the High Trade-Ins. All right. You know, it's contemporary after all. Oh, yes, the rebate is the way of life. Why is it nobody... That's all part of George Orwell, of course. Nobody will concede that there's a price cut, huh? So you call it a rebate. I mean, there's no such thing as a garbage man anymore. There are urban sanitary engineers or sanitary executives. It depends on whether you drive the truck or whether you walk behind it, you know, and shovel up the... Well, it's... oh, yeah. Well, for those of you out there who live in civilization, it's time to give you a brief report, the seasonal report, on what's happening here in the Big Apple. As you know, there's a fantastic dog population in the city of New York. In fact, there have been certain estimates made that said that the dogs outnumber the people in certain areas. Yes, oh, certainly yes. And in some areas, they're even more intelligent. However, one thing that dogs do that most people don't do, and that is, let's put it this way, they have portable facilities. And also very little inhibitions about where they're going to use the portable facility. So I'd like to report now, the last couple of days has been warm here in New York, and no, this is one of the favorite seasons for us in SPLAT. As you know, I'm an organizing director now. I used to be the managing director, but there was a lot of strife. You know what organizations are. As soon as they get organized, within 5 minutes, the factions break up. There's the fundamentalists, and then there's the radical crowd, and then there's the... it gets just sickening, you know. The Women's Lib crowd, for example, in our little SPLAT organization, said that we were unfairly discriminating against female dogs. Well, because female dogs simply do not use the same facilities that male dogs. For example, a female dog has a little trouble with a fire plug. So there was a lot of strife about that, and we argued for months over that whole issue. And I just finally says I don't want to have anything to do with the whole mess. And then at that point, 5 other guys jumped up and says, "Don't use that word here." And I said, "Well, all right, the mess of pottage." And somebody else says, "Oh yes, that's one of those new Welch dog foods, right?" And I says, "No, now cut it out." But the SPLAT, for those of you who don't know anything about it, is a group formed here a few seasons ago. For those of you who have Ferrari in the bedroom, you'll find SPLAT very nicely outlined in that. SPLAT is the Society for the Prevention and Limitation of Animal... Well, radio just hasn't grown up yet. SPLAT. Figure it out yourself. What is it you walk around and you keep stepping on all day long, right? Okay, I will repeat. SPLAT is the Society for the Prevention and Limitation of Animal... Right. And, well, you know, you got to come out and say it sometimes, buddy. I don't make the news. I only step in it. However, you just missed a good line. I'll repeat. I don't make the news. I only step in it. So, nevertheless, SPLAT has been having a fantastic series of great meetings. Just a moment. We're getting a report here from the research department. Hold on. The research department. Just a minute. I'll press the green button here. Yes, research, yes. Okay, let's get ready for that then. We've just gotten a report now that that radio has grown up in the last 14 minutes since the show that Barry Farber just did, Sex and Your Airedale. And it just completely changed the whole attitude of radio. So I would like to say that the organization, if you'd like to join, if you really have, I'll tell you what you have to do, though. You have to prove that you have had at least 3 occasions when you were out with your new Indian sandals, and you were out and you were, you know, everything was great, the sun was shining, and you felt just wonderful, and you're walking down the street with your new Indian sandals and your new flare denim jeans, the whole thing, when all of a sudden, without any warning, yes, right there in the middle of 6th Avenue, and the next thing you know, people are looking at you funny when you're sitting in the office and your sandals, you know the whole thing. See, so you have to prove having been wounded at least 3 times in combat. In fact, I'll tell you what one of the saddest cases we have. We have a member of SPLAT indeterminate sex, but that's not the point. We have a member of SPLAT who had this magnificent pair of russet slacks. They're just beautiful russet slacks made of aged burlap. They were lovely, Yugoslavian, just beautiful, with a rope belt, and just fine. And he was standing on the corner, waiting for a friend to arrive, when this small male dachshund arrived on the scene, saw the russet slacks, and thinking that it was one of these little red fire plugs, he let go, and my friend's new slacks he didn't realize they were not color fast. They ran all over the place, and furthermore, his friend arrived just at that moment and says, "Oh my God, what's the matter with you, Dickie? This is sickening." And it just was a terrible scene. So all I can say to you, friends, if you'd like to join the organization, it is an organization called the Society for the Society is the S, say SPLAT, Society for the Prevention and Limitation of. And if you'd like to join the organization, just send your name and address to SPLAT. SPLAT. I repeat, SPLAT. Again, this stands for, it's an acronym. It stands for the Society and the Prevention of Animal. And it's just growing by leaps and bounds. We have a new chapter in Cleveland that specializes, by the way, in Weimaraners. Because, the Weimaraner, particularly in the Cleveland area, there's something in the water. And let me tell you, there's a lot of action in Cleveland. Just unbelievable. So for those of you who'd like to join, we'd love to have you. And what we do, you know what our slogan is? Kick a mutt in the behind today. Which is what our slogan is, especially if you can catch them in the act. See, you just run right up and you give up. We had a fantastic example of the kind of athletics that are possible in this field. One of our members reported that he was able to kick a rather large German Shepherd, incidentally. It was a rather large German Shepherd who was proceeding about his business right there. He came rushing up. He gave him a nice, solid one. And he was able to put him right over a Fifth Avenue bus. And it was a beautiful shot. It was just the kind of thing that Pete Gogolak, has been working on for years. And we gave him a big hand because we just like to see, once in a while, mankind fighting back. Also, we have other techniques that we use. We for example, like to educate by, how shall I say it, by example. By example. And we have one lady member who likes to give examples to dogs. So she carries this little box around with her, but we don't want to get into that. It gets quite complicated. And if you'd like to join SPLAT, again, as I said, it's a wonderful organization, and SPLAT is moving and growing by leaps and bounds. As the dog population grows, we must form first lines of defense. Get up on the barricades. And as I say, with the onslaught of hot weather, which we have just recently experienced here in New York the last 3 or 4 days, it just gets wonderfully fragrant here. New York is one of the few towns in the country where a person who has a home garden does not have to invest in fertilizer. All you got to do on a nice day is just put your little garden out on the window ledge and let it breathe for a while, and it'll do quite well. So if you'd like to join SPLAT, once again, the organization, the name is an acronym, SPLAT, with an exclamation point at the end, SPLAT. It stands for the Society for the Prevention and Limitation of Animal. We'd love to have you in, and anytime you'd like to join, please get your name and address in the mail, and we will send you all of your proper credentials. And you see, you've got to have your proper credentials, and we have some wonderful bylaws, which, of course, unfortunately, since radio has not totally grown up, we can't discuss on the air. So it's moving. I'm glad to see. This is our best season, of course. I say that adversity breeds action, and it also breeds excitement. And a lot of people who were involved in other great crusades back in the 50s and the 60s, a lot of the old gang, you remember the old gang used to march around, band a bomb? Well, they've been out of work for a long time, and their buttons are getting kind of outdated. and that old crowd. Remember the old Strontium 90 crowd? They used to go around there with the buttons, you know, and the yelling about milk. They're all out of work too. You remember the old bomb shelter crowd? That was a wonderful crowd. Well, a lot of them are joining SPLAT. And if you've been looking for a really ongoing organization with plenty of action, it's SPLAT. It's I just want to, you know, I'm a very conscientious person. Very, very conscientious. You know, speaking of conscientious, I can't figure out what this is. I got a junk mail, piece of mail in the junk file here. It comes in here. See, here it is. It says, would you like to take advantage of our tremendous, unique services? And I get the thing in the mail. I'm just curious what it is. It says automatic fulfillment services. The hell is automatic? That's the answer, isn't it? Everybody's been looking for automatic fulfillment services. And by the way, there's an outfit called Instant Antiquing Corporation. And I'll tell you, I've had some experiences in my life that are instantly antiquing. Wow, I mean, you know, have you ever, you always hear these stories, you know, about a guy whose hair turns totally white in 15 seconds. Have you ever met anybody that actually happened to? Of course not. Old wives' tale. Right. And I know an old wife who sits around over at the Chock full of Nuts over here at 40th and Broad and tells these stories all day long. Old wives' tales. She's older than God. Right. And she tells these stories, you know, about people whose hair turned white overnight just from worry. Or a terrible thing happened, an awful green face. Have you ever had the feeling one day you're going to look out of the window and you're John, and a green face is going to look in at you with yellow eyeballs out of the dark? Well, you mean you get that face every morning just looking in the mirror? Oh, well, you're the one that I've been worried about. You know, speaking of nuttiness, I have a note here. Some guy writes and he says, Shepard, did you ever have in your lifetime a totally unbelievably boring job? Yes. Yes, I did have a totally boring job. And, you know, I think that a man's future, a person's future in life, is tremendously affected by his reaction to boredom. You know, I've known people who don't mind being bored. I mean it. I mean, there are some people who are boredom. So naturally, being bored doesn't mean anything to them. They don't know they're bored, you know. I guess it takes a certain amount of imagination to be bored. I do. I'm very serious to be. For example, I don't think a turtle is ever bored. And he's just sitting there. He can sit there for maybe 200-300 years. And you never see a turtle saying, oh, God, what a drag. This is getting to be such a drag, walking around with this thing on my back. You know, and you don't, you got to have a certain imagination to be bored. So for those of you who have never really been bored, anybody that says to me, I've never been bored in my life, he is saying he is akin to the turtle. And a lot of people come out with this cockamamie phrase, you know, as if that gives them, they're really special. Oh, I've never been bored in my life. And you look at the guy and he's doing the worst boring job you ever saw in your life, see? And you say, you mean you're not capable of being bored? Here you've been sitting for 17 years counting paper clips. I know, it is all in my mind. I imagine great sculptures made of these paper clips, and I see myself as clearing up. No, I'll tell you. I think I'm just curious how many guys and women, men, everybody, whose lives were set by a job they got at about 16 or 17, and they have never deviated from that since. Yeah. I'll tell you you want to hear the most boring job I ever had in my life? Outside of this one. Of course, all present jobs exempted. But the most boring job I can recall ever really seriously having, I learned very early in my life that I cannot do a routine job, a routine task. Now, some people can do a routine task all of their lives and never bother them. I've always wondered about people. You know, like a guy, you know, who can do this. Like some guy who sits in a little cage and for 37 years hands out one socket wrench every 15 minutes and writes down a slip, and then the same socket wrench comes back and he checks it off. I mean, he could do this the whole life, you know. I've wondered about that. It takes a fantastic amount of either no imagination or a total Zen approach to life, where your body is in one place and your mind is out someplace doing unbelievably great things, right? So anyway, I'm a kid. See, I'm about 14, 15 years old now. At this point, I thought boredom consisted of going to school. I thought boredom was really sitting through a civics class, where you sit there. I can remember sitting in the back of a civics class with a guy named Mr. Harris. Mr. Harris didn't only talk through his nose; he talked through only one nostril. And yeah, he had a curious, well, and he's always saying things like, and the city government went to, and I can remember being so unbelievably bored, and I thought that was boredom. Little did I realize that the mere fact that Eileen Akers was in the same room made it so it wasn't boredom. Because, you know, she was there, and there was electricity. And so on this occasion of my 14th birthday, I trotted on down. I figured I was going to make some money. See, I wanted to buy myself this great 3-speed Raleigh bike. You know what those English Raleigh bikes are? I wanted to have one of these. Boy, I could taste it, see. And so I go to the old man. I said, hey, Dad, gee, this would be a great summer for me to have a 3-speed Raleigh bike. He says, yes, it'd be a great summer then for you to have a job, wouldn't it, huh? You want a Raleigh bike? Get a job. Well, I said, well, gee, Dad, if I have a job, I won't be able to use the bike. I mean, I'll be working. And he says, well, that's the way it is, kid. I mean, you know, it's the old story of the cake and eating it. I mean, you can't have your cake and you eat it too. And I said, what's this got to do with a Raleigh bike? What's this business about cake and eating it? He says, well, let me put it this way. No Raleigh bike unless you get a job and pay for it, huh? Well, I got the message. So I went down with Schwartz. Yeah, with me and Schwartz. We hot-footed it down to the State Employment Agency. Have you ever been to the State Employment Agency lately? What's going on there? You guys are having more figuring. I go down to the State Employment Agency. You ever been to it, Barney? It's a humiliating experience. I'll tell you. First of all, they have all these desks with these people sitting around who look very official with baskets all over their desks full of papers of other guys that have come in there and have gotten no place with them, see? And so I come into the employment place there, and there was no jobs anywhere. See, that's the whole point. I mean, just like now, there are no jobs. For 14-year-old kids, forget it, you know? I mean, well, you could pick up a buck or two, you know, cutting somebody's grass, but no job. So anyway, Schwartz and I go down to this place, and we sit in the like a little anteroom. Already I'm starting to get bored. Little did I realize that the world of industry was boring me. See, I wasn't even working, and I was already getting sucked into it because it had an office that looked like the anteroom to every shipping office I've ever seen. You know, a calendar over here, and over there some kind of a cockamamie chart with a line that went up, says production figures for May, you know, that kind of stuff. So I'm sitting there on this bench with Schwartz, and we have filled out 2 forms to see somebody in the next room beyond the little screen where they call you in. And we're sitting there, and there's 500 other people all sitting in there, old guys and elderly ladies and the tall, big guys wearing steel helmets and all kinds, you know, they're all waiting for a job. Well, we sit there the whole 8 hours. Nothing. And the woman looks out of the screen. She says, those of you, they go out in the street, and I get in the bus with Schwartz, and we go back home. And I'm sitting at supper time, you know, and the old man says, how you doing getting a job? I said, oh, you know, I was down at the the state employment agency down there. He said, how do you like it down there? He was never down there. I said, well, it's really fun, Dad. I'll tell you what you do. You sit there, and you read the calendar, and they've got a very good calendar down there. It's from Paswinski's garage. And you look at the calendar, and he says, well, you're paying your dues. No worky, no Raleigh. Right? I said, okay. So at 8 o'clock in the morning, Schwartz and I are there. You know, we're not used to even getting up at 8 o'clock in the morning in summer vacation, see? So we're there at 8 o'clock in the morning. We're sitting. And 10 o'clock goes by, 11 o'clock goes by, noon goes by, and you see all the people get up and leave and go to lunch inside the cage, see? And as they leave, the girl says, do not leave because we may call you at any time. So they go out to lunch and they come back and we're sitting. Finally, at 2:30 or 3 o'clock, as the shadows are lengthening, I get called. They didn't call Schwartz, they called me in. So I walk in, I sit down, and the guy says, now, let's see. You're 7 years old? Let's see. No, you're 14. 14, you certainly don't look a kid. Well, I am. This is, well, all right, I'll take your word for it. You're 14 years old. Let's see, you live on the Cleveland Street. Okay, now, what is your experience? What have you done? Well, I play third base. He says, we have no openings at this time for third baseman. However, you must have done other things. What have you done? I shoot a BB gun a lot. BB gun shooter. Well, we have no openings that we have here for BB gun testing. Do you think you could test BB guns? But we have no openings for that. What else have you done? I go to the store a lot. My mother. Oh, do you have a driver's license? Maybe you can work at the grocery store and deliver groceries. No, I don't have a driver's license. 14, you can't get one till you're 16, at least. Oh, I see, no driver's license. Well, I'll tell you what. Have you ever been an apprentice? I said, apprentice? What do you mean, like a jockey or something? He says, no, an apprentice, where you go and learn to be something. I said, gee, that sounds interesting. What do you learn to be? He said, we don't mess around with that here. We just get a call for apprentices. Now, do you want to be an apprentice or not? I said, yeah. Do you get paid? Well, yes. Well, sort of, when you're an apprentice. You get more experience, actually, is what you get. But you get paid. Well, yes, I'd like to be one. So Schwartz and I signed up to be apprentices. Have you ever done this? Sign up to be an apprentice? Well, I go back home, see, and nothing happens for about 3 or 4 days. And I'm really like, you know, by this time I figure, well, I'm not going to get this job. And it's just not going to work, see. Well, one day, the phone rings at home, and on the phone is the State Employment Services, and they said, is Mr. Shepard there? And my mother says, you must be talking about the kid here, right? She says, Mr. Shepard, would you put down the peanut butter and jelly sandwich and come over here? There is a state office wishes to talk to you on the phone. So I come over and I said, hello. By the way, that's a classical kid way of saying it. Hello. How many times have you heard that on the phone? Hello. So I get on the phone. Hello. I guess, is this Mr. Shepard? Yeah. No, my name is Gene. He said, oh, yes, so we have here Gene Shepard. Is that you? Yes. Well, Mr. Shepard, would you please go? You applied for an apprentice position. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Would you please go to this address, 1422 Sibley Street, tomorrow at 8 a.m., and you're all set then. You have your papers? You have the slip we gave you? Yeah. That's it. The next morning, 8 o'clock, Schwartz and I go to this big, long brick building filled with these gray windows. You know those gray windows they have in factories, covered with gray dust and that? Every time I see one of those buildings, I feel boredom just to see the building. My head starts going to sleep. And we go to the office marked personnel, a little door in there, personnel. We give them the slips. And 5 minutes later, I was embarked on the single most boring job I ever had in my life. It was a piano factory. And I was an apprentice in the glue department. Now, what they had a bunch of hot plates. And on the hot plates were these gallon paint cans filled with glue. My job was just to stand there all day long and watch the pots to make sure that they did not overflow because there was heat under them. That's all I did. All day long I stood and looked at pots. Nobody came. Nobody went. Once in a while, a guy would walk in, never say a word to me, grab a pot and walk out. Then half an hour later, somebody would come in with a pot and put it on the hot plate. I just stood. 8 hours. 8 hours watching a pot. Well, 4:30, this whistle went boop. Everybody ran out, and the guy came in and turned the hot plate off. I left the building with the rest of the guys. And I said to Schwartz, "What are you doing, Schwartz?" He said, "I'm working in the sandpaper department." I says, "What do you do?" He says, "Well, I watch the sandpaper to make sure nobody steals it." I said, "Do people steal sandpaper?" He says, "No, I just sit and watch it." I said, "How do you like it?" "I don't know." The next day at 8 o'clock, I punched in. I sat and watched the pots. And by the end of the third day, I was slowly turning into a carrot. I could actually see the roots going down. And I could see the green things coming out of the top of my head. And by Friday, I was completely out of my mind with boredom. I couldn't believe it. 8 hours went by, 6, 7 months would go by during the day. Wednesday of the second week, a guy I had never seen came into the room and he says, "You Shepherd?" I'm sitting there watching the pots. By this time, they're mesmerizing me. I can't look at anything but the pots. He says, "Hey, look at me. I'm talking to you. Are you Shepherd?" "Yeah." He said, "We don't need you anymore." I said, "What?" He said, "You didn't make it." I said, "What do you mean?" "Just didn't make it, kid." He says, "Get down to the employment office and get your check." I go down there. The guy says, "Sorry we had to let you go, kid. You know, you gotta have something to work here." I says, "I'm fired." And they give me the check for $8.42. And I go home, fired from my first job. I thought I paid my dues, boredom. By the way, Schwartz lasted 10 days longer till they caught up with him in the sandpaper department. He wasn't cutting it watching sandpaper, you know. Well, you know, you pick your teeth once in a while. It doesn't work. So life goes on. One night from tonight.
By recording from New York, you've been listening to The World of Gene Shepherd. Do join us again tomorrow night at 6:30.